Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today in my daily update. I have a few general comments for you, things that have been happening, and that's basically it for today. So, first of all, I'm assuming if you've been following, you know that Israel has surrounded Gaza City. I'm not sure if we've completed the encirclement, but it's pretty much done. And the way this is built is that there's the north and the south, and Israel has circled the city of Gaza, which is in the north of the Gaza Strip, and that is where most of the tunnels and all that stuff is. So that's really where most of the fighting needs to happen, and also whether fortunately or unfortunately, where we believe the hostages are being kept. I say unfortunately because they might be down in the tunnels with Hamas, which will make extracting them more difficult. On the other hand, of course, the more we put pressure on the Hamas, the more we prevent them from getting restocked and refueled and all sorts of other things, then the less chance it is that they will last out in those tunnels. They probably have the ability to last out for some time, but even if technically they can last, and that's where we believe the bulk of their forces is, emotionally, psychologically, we're putting a lot of pressure on them. So that's what's been going on. Israel has been, plowing forward, and until now we've gone through some residential areas, but not the main ones. The main residential areas of Gaza are pretty dense, and it's going to be a challenge to continue forward. But it's not a challenge that the Israeli army can't handle, just one that we need to handle. Another thing that is worthwhile noting is that on Friday, the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, gave a speech. Everybody was waiting for this. He made a big deal out of the fact that he'll give a speech. I have not watched the speech myself, but from what I understand, he said very little. He mainly said, we didn't know that this was going to start. Hamas didn't coordinate with us, and we support Hamas. But he didn't say anything about starting an offensive against Israel. And this apparently created a strong backlash against him in the militant Arab world, saying that he is just talk and has really nothing to say, and won't put any actions behind his words. From our perspective, that's of course good. It means that he's being deterred, assuming that it's not some sort of diversion, and that he actually is planning to do this to lower our guard. That might mean that Hezbollah is out of the game, and hopefully that's the truth for the time being. That being said, they'll be out of the game as long as they see that Israel has support from the world, and that it's not a good idea to mess with the rest of the world just because they want to mess with Israel. So let's hope that the world continues to give us the support that we need. Today, there was an event that happened that was mainly internal politically, but you might hear about it, and it's important that you know because I don't want you to be misled by things that you hear. So, in an interview that was done with one of the more right-wing cabinet ministers, his last name I think is Eliyahu. So he was asked. He was talking about how we have to take a very forceful stance with regards to Hamas, and he was asked, "So what? You're saying we should take something like an atomic bomb and drop on Gaza if there weren't any civilians there?" And he said, "That's one way, but there's other ways too." That was sort of his general comment, and then he went off. But this was taken as if he's saying maybe we should actually um, drop an atomic bomb on Gaza. Now, Israel doesn't officially admit that they have atomic weapons, that we have atomic weapons. According to foreign sources, we do. We know that this is probably true, and we just don't talk about it. Israel is not part of the different accords that the UN has of preventing dissemination of atomic weapons. So none of this is official. And by saying that, of course, people felt like he was damaging a lot of Israel's work in the world in terms of trying to present ourselves as wanting peace and not being overly belligerent and overly militant. I just want to say about that, first of all, as an Israeli, I can tell you that nobody here is thinking about using anything like an atomic bomb. There's nobody that is considering that in any serious way. It's just not the kind of thing that is part of what we would do, not under these conditions. I would say if Israel ever used an atomic bomb, it would be because we felt that our actual survival was at stake and not just as a way to eradicate Hamas. We have plenty of conventional tools to do that if we want to. I also don't think, it doesn't sound like he came on this show with a plan to talk about this. It was simply a question initiated by the interviewer. Again, I saw a transcript, so assuming the transcript is reliable, that is the case. It's mainly a case of bad language that can then be taken and used against Israel in all sorts of, social media, etc. So if you see this, just be aware of the context. I suggest you go and read the transcript yourself or a translation of it. If you need that kind of thing, just write to me in your comments on YouTube, and I will be happy to search for it for you if it helps you. But this was said. Just be aware and tuck that away for your own needs. Then finally, there are two more points. The first one is there was a really, I would like to say shocking, but it's not really shocking. It's just another piece of how different this culture is, the culture of Hamas and of maybe the Palestinians in general. Hamas decided that they wanted to lift the morale of the people. And how are they going to do that, you ask, under these conditions? Well, they basically created a drive-in, movie showing, in the Shifa hospital. Shifa hospital, as you may have heard, is where Hamas actually has its base of operations. So imagine the chief of staff headquarters, okay, the Pentagon, and meshed in with the hospital. That way, you protect yourself because people don't want to attack a hospital, right? Because of issues of international law. As I mentioned before, the moment you decide to put your base of operations within a civilian population, and specifically hospitals, it's fair game from international law standpoint. But Israel has to be very careful not to enrage the world or be misunderstood. So we are, of course, are very careful. So they're treating that area right now as a safe zone. It's worthwhile pointing out that over the weekend, Hamas tried to. This is just as a parenthetical comment to what I'm about to say. Hamas tried to use a Red Crescent ambulances to smuggle terrorists and their weapons within Gaza. This was detected by the IDF, and we fired on that ambulance because they're just trying to manipulate the system. Okay, they're using the Western values that generated the Geneva Accords in order to attack the West. That's effectively what they're doing. But back to Shifa Hospital. How do they raise their morale, you ask? Well, let me tell you how. They put a big screen TV. There's pictures of this on Twitter. I'll maybe find it and link to it. And they broadcast on it apparently sections of the Hamas greatest hits. Hamas greatest hits. Sorry for all the bleeps here. But Hamas greatest hits. I did not see the actual greatest hits, but I'm assuming that one of the things that we're seeing there are things. I'm assuming that one of the things that we're seeing there are things like, their attacks on October 7th. So yeah, most likely very bloody. This was the way that they decided to spend their time. One thing I would like to point out, this thing demands a lot of electricity, a lot of light. The place is fully lit. So whenever anybody tells you that they're running out of electricity in their hospital, just look at this picture. They got plenty of electricity. That is not a problem for them at the moment. They definitely have enough electricity to have a open drive-through broadcast for hundreds of people at least, maybe more. And again, just goes again to the culture of lies and deception that they use, as part of their media campaign in the world. Finally, I'd just like to point out one thing, which again goes back to lies and deception. One of the things that's been happening is that all sorts of more moderate Arab countries have been speaking out against Israel, taking back their let's say their ambassadors. I think Jordan did that. It is important to note that a lot of these countries are still very actively working in support of Israel militarily. Jordan, which separates Israel from its eastern neighbors, for example, Iran or Yemen, um, has anti-missile systems that were deployed there by the Americans that are being used to defend Israel from missile attacks. I believe the same. I believe I saw something similar about Saudi Arabia, though I might be misinformed about Saudi Arabia. And definitely Egypt is working with us. And all this is to say, sometimes people, and I think I even saw something about Turkey, where Erdogan gave a very, very, like a terrible, terrible anti-Israel and maybe even anti-Semitic speech recently about the Jews. He also is, let's say, defending American forces on his soil that are there to, amongst other points, defend Israel in all sorts of scenarios. So you have to remember that the Arab nations, probably also the Western nations, but for sure the Arab nations have a very strong dissonance between what they say and what they really want. A lot of the more moderate Arab nations, definitely the Sunni nations, remember that the biggest conflict within our region that is not with Israel has to do with the Sunni Arabs and the Shiite Arabs, different strains of Islam. So Iran and Hezbollah are Shiite. I believe Hamas is also Shiite, but I'm not sure about that. Whereas Egypt and Saudi Arabia are Sunni. So there's a lot of tension there just for religious reasons. And they really would like Israel to win. They would love Israel to destroy Hamas. They would love Israel to destroy, any like Palestinian militant force in this region that is supported by Iran, because they want to defeat Iran. And so, even if publicly they speak one way, in practice they do another, and that's just an important thing to keep in mind. I guess one last thing, which was will add to the lies and deception section of this report today, and that is that apparently some countries in the West have said that they are willing to be a place where refugees from Gaza come because they really need to show all their support and their humanitarian side towards these poor people that are suffering here. According to one of the Israeli news outlets, they did one of these investigative pieces where they called up pretending to be Palestinians and asked if they could come and how they could come, because they're Palestinians and they heard on the news that they could come. And the different officials that they spoke to said to them, well, you can't really come, it's not that easy, and began to sort of like push them away. So even that might be also just, virtue signaling and not much, truth to it. So yeah, just sharing that with you. It's always good to stay on our toes when it comes to finding out what is real, what is not real, what is being done just for show, and what is honest, real conviction that we need to take seriously as what people really want to do. Yeah, that's basically it for today. During this coming week, I hope to have a few more interviews, one or two. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And for now, I just want to wish you guys a good day. Stay safe. And, Am Yisrael Chai. See you in another day or two. Bye-bye.